The paper trembled in his hand. At first, he thought it was a joke, something childish, something careless. He had laughed when he said it, leaning back in his leather chair, tapping his expensive pen against the polished glass desk. "Bring whatever you want," he had told her, amused by the nervous way she clutched the folded sheet. "It's just a school activity." He laughed, until he saw what was on the paper. "Before we begin, if you believe in kindness, in second chances, and in the quiet power of compassion, take a moment to like this video, share it with someone who needs a reminder of hope, comment your thoughts, and subscribe to the channel. Stories like this matter, and so does your support." It was career day at Westbridge High, a school known more for its wealthy donors than its struggling students. The auditorium gleamed with banners and fresh polish. Parents in tailored suits and shimmering dresses filled the front rows, proud and polished. The invited speakers were lawyers, surgeons, tech founders, people who had climbed high and made sure everyone knew it. At the center of it all was Daniel Rahman, CEO of a fast-growing tech company, a man whose face had been on magazine covers and business podcasts. He had grown up poor, yes, but he rarely mentioned that part anymore. He preferred the version of his story that sparkled, the scholarships, the awards, the penthouse view. When the principal invited him to speak, he agreed instantly. It was good publicity, good branding, a chance to inspire. He didn't expect her. Her name was Amina Yusuf, a thin girl with tired eyes and a uniform that had been washed too many times. She lived with her mother and younger brother in a crumbling apartment not far from the railway tracks. Her father had passed away when she was 10. Her mother cleaned houses during the day and stitched clothes at night to keep food on the table. Amina had talent, the kind that hid quietly in the corners. She loved writing. She loved stories. She wrote poems in the margins of old notebooks and folded them into her pockets like treasures. But at Westbridge High, talent often bowed to wealth. And Amina had none. Career Day required each student to bring a visual representation of what they wanted to become. A prop, a symbol, a statement. Most students arrived with stethoscopes, miniature gavels, printed business plans, mock blueprints. Some even borrowed real equipment from their parents. It was a parade of privilege disguised as ambition. Amina stood in line backstage, clutching a single sheet of paper. When Daniel noticed her lingering by the curtain, he assumed she was nervous about meeting him. He smiled casually and asked what she planned to bring to represent her dream. She hesitated, then showed him the folded paper. He chuckled lightly. "Bring whatever you want," he repeated, amused at her seriousness. "It doesn't have to be perfect." He moved on, shaking hands, posing for photos. But when her turn came, the room shifted. She didn't carry a stethoscope. She didn't carry a model or a device. She walked onto the stage with nothing but that paper in her trembling hands. The auditorium quieted, partly out of politeness, partly out of curiosity. Daniel watched from the side, still half smiling. Then she unfolded the sheet. It wasn't a drawing. It wasn't a diagram. It was a list. At the top, in careful handwriting, it read, "Things I want to bring back." The first item said, "My father." A hush fell over the crowd. The second said, "My mother's smile." The third, "The electricity that gets cut off every winter." The fourth, "Enough food so my brother doesn't pretend he's not hungry." Her voice trembled as she read, but she didn't cry. She stood there, small but unbreakable, and continued. "Warm shoes. A door that locks properly. Time to study without worrying about rent. Books that don't belong to someone else. And one day, a chance." By the time she finished, the silence in the auditorium felt heavy, not awkward, but sacred. Daniel's smile had vanished. He stared at the paper in her hands, at the ink that carried more truth than any polished speech he had prepared. In that moment, the glass walls he had built around his past began to crack. He remembered his own childhood, the nights when his mother skipped meals so he could eat, the humiliation of wearing shoes 2 sizes too small, the shame of pretending everything was fine. He had buried those memories under success. Amina had just dug them up. The applause started slowly, uncertain, then grew. Not loud and flashy, but deep, resonant, honest. Some parents looked down at their laps. Some students blinked back tears. Daniel stepped forward, abandoning his prepared speech. He spoke differently than he had planned. He spoke without slides, without rehearsed jokes. He spoke about hunger, about fear, About the quiet strength of children who carry adult worries. He admitted that he had once stood where Amina stood, invisible, underestimated. And for the first time in years, he told the whole truth. After the event, he asked to speak with her. She thought she was in trouble. In the principal's office, under the ticking clock and framed certificates, Daniel asked her about the list. About her father. About her dreams. She didn't ask for money. She didn't ask for favors. She said she wanted to become a writer, someone who told stories about people like her mother, people no one noticed. Daniel felt something shift inside him, something uncomfortable and powerful. Over the next few weeks, he couldn't stop thinking about the paper. About the first item on the list. My father. He realized something painful. He had spent years trying to escape his past, while she was trying to honor hers. So he did something unexpected. He returned to Westbridge High, not for publicity, not for branding, but quietly. He funded a scholarship in her father's name. Not just for Amina, but for students who carried invisible burdens. He arranged tutoring support. He connected her with a local writing mentor. He ensured her family's rent was paid anonymously for a year. But more importantly, he visited. Not as a CEO. As someone who remembered. Amina's life didn't transform overnight. Her mother still worked long hours. The apartment still had cracks in the walls. But the electricity stayed on. The fridge was fuller. Her brother laughed more. And Amina wrote. She wrote about grief that felt like waves. About mothers who stitched hope into torn fabric. About girls who held paper like it was power. Months later, her essay won a national competition. The prize wasn't huge, but it was enough to prove she belonged. At the award ceremony, she held another piece of paper. This time, the title read, Things I Can Bring Forward. At the top, she wrote, My father's strength. Then, my mother's resilience. Then, my own voice. Daniel sat in the audience, not in the front row, not in the spotlight. He watched her stand taller than she had months before. He understood something then. Success wasn't about how far you climbed. It was about how many you lifted. If this story is touching your heart, if you've ever carried silent struggles or believed in the power of being seen, please take a moment to like this video, share it with someone who needs encouragement, and subscribe to the channel. Your engagement helps stories like Amina's reach further than any stage ever could. And before we end, I have a special request for you. Comment the word, hope, if you believe that one act of kindness can change a life. Let's fill the comments with light. Years later, Amina published her first book. It wasn't flashy. It didn't have a glamorous launch party. But it told the truth, about loss, about dignity, about the courage to stand on stage with nothing but a piece of paper and a list of impossible dreams. In the dedication, she wrote, to the man who laughed, and then chose to listen. Daniel kept that first paper framed in his office. Not as a reminder of guilt, but as a reminder of responsibility. Because sometimes, when we say, bring whatever you want, we expect something small. We don't expect someone to bring us face to face with who we used to be. And sometimes, the most powerful thing a person can bring, is the truth. A single sheet of paper. A list. And the courage to read it aloud.